Baruch Spinoza was born into a world shaped by fear long before he ever formed a single thought of his own. His family came from Portugal, from a line of people who had learned to survive by hiding belief. For generations, they lived under the shadow of the Inquisition, where religion was enforced not through persuasion, but through punishment. Many were forced to convert publicly while practicing their faith in secret. Silence was safety. Visibility was danger. When Spinoza family arrived in Amsterdam, they believed they had reached freedom. The city was known for tolerance, trade, and intellectual openness. But tolerance had limits. Freedom existed only inside boundaries that were carefully guarded. The Jewish community in Amsterdam was tightly organized. Belief was not only spiritual, it was social protection. Everyone depended on everyone else. Any threat to unity was treated as a threat to survival. Spinoza was born into this environment in 1632. From childhood, he was taught scripture, law, and interpretation with intensity. He learned Hebrew. He studied sacred texts not casually, but with precision. Every sentence mattered. Every word carried authority. This education trained his mind deeply. He learned how arguments were constructed. He learned how conclusions were reached. He learned how truth was defended through structure. But even as a young student, Spinoza noticed something that stayed with him for life. Different teachers gave different interpretations of the same texts. Arguments that claimed certainty contradicted one another. Authority often depended not on truth, but on position. Spinoza did not rebel. He observed. He listened. He compared. He was quiet by nature. Serious. Withdrawn. Not dramatic. Not emotional. His questioning was internal and slow. He did not seek conflict. He sought coherence. As he grew older, Spinoza encountered ideas outside his religious education. Latin philosophy, mathematics, natural science, especially the work of Descartes, who argued that reality could be understood through reason alone. This was not merely new information. It was a new method. Reason did not rely on tradition. It relied on clarity, on consistency, on necessity. Spinoza realized something unsettling. If truth could be discovered through reason, then authority was no longer sacred. And if authority was no longer sacred, belief could no longer be enforced. This realization created a quiet fracture inside him. He began to examine ideas that were considered unquestionable. The nature of God, the meaning of divine will, the purpose of Scripture, the origin of moral laws. He did not deny God. That is important. Spinoza was not an atheist in the common sense. What he rejected was a specific image of God, the image of a ruler who commands, the image of a judge who intervenes, the image of a being separate from the world. Spinoza began to suspect that such an image was created by human fear and desire, not by reason. At the same time, he saw how powerful that image was, how it organized societies, how it shaped obedience, how it controlled emotion. He understood that questioning it openly would not lead to dialogue. It would lead to expulsion. In his early 20s, Spinoza became isolated within his own community. People noticed his silence, his refusal to affirm what others affirmed automatically, his lack of ritual enthusiasm. Silence was interpreted as defiance. In 1656, the synagogue issued the most severe form of ban possible. Spinoza was expelled completely, socially erased, forbidden from contact, his name spoken only in condemnation. The wording of the ban was harsh and absolute. There was no path back, no forgiveness clause, no future reconciliation. Spinoza did not resist. He did not argue. He did not beg. He walked away. This moment marks one of the most important decisions in the history of philosophy. Spinoza chose truth over belonging, but not loudly, not proudly, quietly. He changed his name slightly. He left the city. He lived modestly. He avoided attention. To survive, he learned a trade, grinding lenses for optical instruments, telescopes, microscopes, tools that bring clarity by correcting distortion. This work suited him perfectly. Lens grinding demands patience. A single uneven movement ruins the entire surface. Precision is everything. There is no shortcut. Spinoza approached philosophy the same way. During these years of isolation, he began constructing a vision of reality unlike anything before it. Not poetic, not mystical, mathematical, necessary. At the center of his thinking was one radical idea: that God and nature are the same. Not symbolically, not metaphorically, literally. There is only one substance, infinite, self-existing, eternal. Everything that exists is a mode of this substance. Nothing stands outside it. Nothing interrupts it. This substance does not choose. It does not decide. It does not judge. It expresses itself through infinite laws. This meant that everything that happens by necessity, not because it was intended, but because it could not be otherwise. For Spinoza, this was not depressing. It was liberating. Human suffering, he believed, came from misunderstanding reality. People believed events should have been different. They imagined alternatives that never existed. They blamed themselves, others, or God. This created guilt, anger, fear, hope, despair. Spinoza believed emotions were not moral failures. They were mechanical responses caused by incomplete understanding. To understand necessity was to reduce suffering. Freedom did not mean escaping causes. Freedom meant knowing them. Spinoza knew these ideas were dangerous, not because they were violent, but because they removed fear-based control. He refused fame. He refused institutions. He refused to simplify. He wrote slowly, privately, carefully. His greatest work, the Ethics, was constructed like a mathematical proof. Definitions, axioms, propositions, each step built logically on the last. This was intentional. He wanted truth to be unavoidable, not persuasive. As the night deepens, Spinoza appears not as a rebel, but as a craftsman of clarity. A man who believed peace comes from understanding reality exactly as it is. And this is only the foundation. Spinoza's understanding of God begins by removing something most people assume is essential: choice. In Spinoza's view, God does not choose to create the world. God does not decide events. God does not pause and intervene. These ideas belong to human imagination, not to reality itself. Spinoza believed that humans project their own psychology onto the universe. Because humans act with intention, they assume the universe must also act with intention. Because humans plan, reward, punish, hope, and regret, they imagine God doing the same. Spinoza argued that this projection is the root of superstition. For him, God is not a person. God is existence itself, infinite substance, eternal reality. Everything that exists within God. Nothing stands outside of it. Nothing interrupts it. Nothing directs it from above. This means there is no separation between creator and creation. Nature is not something God made and then stepped away from. Nature is God expressing itself. Every tree, every storm, every thought, every human emotion, all follow from the same necessity. Spinoza called this necessity the order of nature. Nothing in nature happens randomly. Nothing happens for a moral reason. Everything happens because it follows from what came before. This idea deeply unsettles people because it removes blame and praise from the structure of reality. If everything follows necessity, then nothing could have happened differently. Spinoza did not say this to excuse behavior. He said it to explain it. He believed that moral judgment based on anger or resentment only increases suffering. It does not increase understanding. For Spinoza, the universe does not care. And that is not cruelty. It is neutrality. From this foundation, he reached one of his most misunderstood conclusions. There is no free will in the way people usually imagine it. Spinoza did not believe humans were puppets, but he believed humans misunderstand their own actions. People feel free because they are aware of their desires, but unaware of the causes that produce those desires. A person says, "I chose this," but they do not see the chain of causes that led to that choice. Biology, memory, habit, emotion, environment, all operating silently. Freedom for Spinoza does not mean acting without causes. That would be chaos. Freedom means understanding the causes that move you. A stone thrown through the air, if conscious, would believe it chose to fly. Humans are similar. We experience motion without seeing the push. This insight shapes everything that follows. Spinoza believed the mind and body are not separate things. They are one thing seen in two ways. Mental events and physical events are the same reality expressed differently. There is no soul trapped inside a body. There is no ghost directing matter. Thought and extension move together as one system. This idea eliminates another source of fear. There is no battle between flesh and spirit. No corruption of a pure soul by a sinful body. Only one unified process unfolding according to nature. From this unity, Spinoza developed his theory of emotions. He believed emotions are not mysterious forces. They are natural events, like weather, like gravity. Every emotion arises from how a person encounters reality. Joy is the feeling of increased power to exist. Sadness is the feeling of decreased power to exist. Desire is the movement toward what increases that power. Love is joy accompanied by the idea of an external cause. Hate is sadness accompanied by the idea of an external cause. These emotions are not good or bad in themselves. They simply occur. The problem begins when humans misunderstand them. When people believe their emotions are commands rather than signals, they become controlled by them. Anger becomes vengeance. Fear becomes paralysis. Hope becomes dependency. Spinoza believed most human suffering comes from passive emotions. Emotions that happen to us rather than emotions we understand. When a person understands the cause of an emotion, the emotion weakens. Not because it disappears, but because it loses its absolute authority. Understanding transforms passion into action. This is Spinoza's version of freedom. Not domination of emotion, but clarity about it. He believed that the highest form of human life is not obedience to rules, but understanding of reality. When a person sees how they fit into the order of nature, they stop demanding the world be different. Acceptance for Spinoza is not resignation. It is alignment. This is why he rejected reward and punishment as foundations of morality. He believed people act better not when threatened, but when they understand. Understanding creates stability. Stability creates peace. Spinoza extended this thinking into politics and religion. He believed Scripture was written by humans responding to historical conditions. He respected its moral intentions, but rejected its literal authority. He believed religious institutions often preserve power by maintaining fear. He argued that freedom of thought was essential for social stability, not dangerous. Suppressed thought creates unrest. Open inquiry creates resilience. Because of these views, his works were banned across Europe. His name became synonymous with heresy, yet quietly his influence spread. He never married. He lived modestly. He refused academic positions that required ideological conformity. He chose independence over safety. Spinoza's health declined from years of fine glass dust inhalation. He died young at 44. He left behind no wealth, no institution, no followers in his lifetime. What he left was a system so internally consistent that centuries later it still unsettles and calms in equal measure. As the night continues, his ideas begin to work quietly on the mind, not promising salvation, not offering hope, but offering understanding. Spinoza believed that there are different ways a human mind can know reality. Most people live their entire lives using only the weakest forms of knowledge, without realizing there are deeper levels available. The first kind of knowing is imagination. This is how most people experience the world. Through images, memories, hearsay, and emotion. It is fragmented and often inaccurate. It connects events based on coincidence rather than cause. Superstition is born here. Fear grows here. Hope and anxiety dominate this level. When people say fate is against me, or God punished me, or things happen for a reason, they are speaking from imagination. Not because they are foolish, but because imagination is natural and immediate. The second kind of knowing is reason. This is where Spinoza places science, mathematics, and philosophy. Reason looks for causes. It seeks patterns that apply universally. It does not rely on personal experience alone. It understands that the same laws apply everywhere. Through reason, a person begins to see that emotions arise from causes and that events unfold according to necessity. This already reduces suffering because confusion begins to dissolve. But Spinoza believed there is an even higher form of knowing. He called it intuitive knowledge. This is not intuition as people commonly imagine it, not a gut feeling, not mysticism. It is a direct understanding of how a particular thing follows from the whole of nature. It is seeing not just that something happens, but why it must happen exactly as it does. At this level, the mind no longer fights reality. It aligns with it. This alignment produces something Spinoza considered the highest human experience. He called it the intellectual love of God. This love is not emotional devotion. It is not worship. It is understanding accompanied by joy. When a mind comprehends reality clearly, it experiences peace. Not excitement, not pleasure, peace. This love is not directed at a personal God. It is directed at existence itself, at the order of nature, and necessity. It is love without expectation, without fear, without dependency. Spinoza believed this state could not be taken away by external events, because it does not depend on circumstances. It depends on understanding. This is why he believed the wise person is not troubled by fortune, not because they are numb, but because they no longer expect the universe to obey their wishes. This brings us to Spinoza's view of good and evil. He rejected them as absolute categories. Good is what increases our power to exist. Evil is what decreases it. These are relative to our nature, not command from outside reality. Something can be good for one being and harmful to another. Nature does not judge. It operates. From this perspective, moral outrage loses its foundation. Not compassion, but hatred. Spinoza believed hatred always harms the one who holds it, because it is sadness attached to an idea of an external cause. Understanding dissolves hatred because it dissolves the illusion that someone freely chose to harm you independent of causes. This does not mean injustice should be accepted passively. It means it should be addressed rationally, not emotionally. Spinoza believed societies function best when they are guided by reason, not fear. When laws exist to promote stability, not moral superiority. He believed freedom of thought was essential, not because all ideas are good, but because suppressing thought creates resentment and instability. People obey more reliably when they understand than when they are forced. This insight made Spinoza dangerous to both religious and political authorities. He argued that the purpose of the state is not to control minds, but to protect bodies, to allow people to think freely while living peacefully. This separation of belief and obedience was radical. Religion for Spinoza had a social function, not a metaphysical authority. Its role was to encourage ethical behavior among those not guided by reason, not to define truth. Truth belonged to philosophy, not to scripture. Scripture belonged to imagination, not because it was useless, but because it spoke in stories and symbols suited to a particular historical audience. When scripture was treated as science or metaphysics, it became harmful. Spinoza's approach threatened centuries of power structures built on fear of divine punishment. That is why his books were banned, why his name was cursed, why his ideas spread quietly rather than openly. Yet his influence moved slowly beneath the surface. Later thinkers recognized his clarity, his refusal to flatter human ego, his calm dismantling of illusion. He offered no promise of immortality of the soul, only continuity of understanding. The part of the mind that understands reality participates in eternity because truth itself is eternal. This idea is subtle and often misunderstood. Spinoza did not say the personal self survives death. Memory, personality, identity dissolve. But the understanding of reality is timeless. When a mind aligns with truth, it touches something that does not belong to time. This is not comfort in the usual sense, but is peace. As the hours pass, Spinoza philosophy works quietly. It does not demand belief. It invites clarity. It asks nothing except honesty about how things are. And in that honesty, it offers a strange form of freedom. For Spinoza, the question was never how to escape the world. It was how to live inside it without being destroyed by it. He believed most people suffer not because life is cruel, but because they expect life to be something it is not. They expect fairness written into events. They expect meaning assigned to pain. They expect reward to follow virtue and punishment to follow wrongdoing. When these expectations collapse, suffering begins. Spinoza philosophy does not try to repair those expectations. It dissolves them. He believed happiness is not pleasure and not excitement. It is stability of mind, a steady increase in the power to exist without inner conflict. This stability comes from understanding necessity. When a person understands that everything follows from causes, they stop asking why me. They stop interpreting events as personal attacks or rewards. Life becomes intelligible rather than hostile. This does not remove pain. It removes added suffering. Spinoza believed fear and hope are the two most powerful forces enslaving the human mind. Fear ties the mind to imagined futures. Hope ties the mind to imagined outcomes. Both pull attention away from reality as it is. He believed religious systems often exploit fear and hope to control behavior. Promise reward, threaten punishment, maintain obedience. But a person guided by reason does not need these levers. Such a person acts ethically not out of fear of consequences, but out of understanding of what sustains life. Spinoza defined virtue simply: acting according to one's own nature understood clearly. To act virtuously is to act in a way that preserves and enhances one's being while respecting the same process in others. This leads to cooperation not because it is morally commanded, but because conflict weakens everyone involved. Spinoza believed the wise person seeks friendship, not domination, understanding, not victory, peace, not triumph. He did not romanticize solitude. He believed humans are social by nature, but he believed true community must be built on understanding, not fear. This is why he rejected fanaticism of all kinds: religious, political, ideological. Any system that demands belief without understanding produces instability. The wise person does not mock belief. They understand why it exists. They see it as a stage, not an enemy. Spinoza did not want to destroy religion. He wanted to separate it from truth claims about reality. He believed religion could teach obedience, kindness, and social harmony to those not guided by reason. But it should never govern philosophy. This separation was revolutionary. It laid the groundwork for modern secular thought: freedom of conscience, freedom of inquiry, tolerance not as moral virtue, but as political necessity. Spinoza was ahead of his time because he removed ego from philosophy. He did not ask what humans deserve. He asked how humans work. He did not ask what reality should be. He asked what reality is. In daily life, this philosophy is quiet. It does not demand withdrawal. It does not require asceticism. It does not reject emotion. It asks for awareness. When anger arises, one asks what caused it. When fear appears, one asks what belief sustains it. When sadness settles, one asks what power has been reduced. This questioning transforms experience. The emotion does not disappear instantly, but loosens. It becomes something that happens rather than something that commands. Spinoza believed this transformation is gradual, lifelong, never complete. Wisdom is not a state achieved once. It is a direction of movement. This is why he never promised salvation. He promised clarity. Toward the end of his life, Spinoza lived quietly. He avoided attention. He declined honors. He refused to soften his ideas for safety. He died young from lung illness, likely caused by years of glass dust. His death was calm, unremarkable, almost invisible, but his ideas did not disappear. They resurfaced slowly, quietly, in thinkers who recognized their depth. He was admired by scientists who valued necessity, by philosophers who valued coherence, by those who sought peace without illusion. Even today, his ideas unsettle because they remove comforting lies without replacing them with new ones. Spinoza does not tell you that everything will be fine. He tells you why everything happens. And in that understanding, something subtle changes. The need to control lessens. The need to blame fades. The need to beg reality for mercy dissolves. What remains is alignment, a sense of belonging not to a group or belief, but to existence itself. This is Spinoza's quiet gift. Not hope, not faith, understanding. And as the night deepens, understanding becomes rest. Not because answers are complete, but because the struggle against reality has finally stopped.